extraordinary, Brian, which shows essentially in a western suburb of Kiev called Bucha, near the Hostomel air base that my colleague Matthew Chance had actually seen Russian soldiers at several days ago, who had taken part in some kind of an air assault to take control of that air base. What you're seeing in this video is essentially a column of Russian military vehicles, armored personnel carriers, other vehicles part of that convoy that appear to have been completely destroyed by Ukrainian forces. Now that just gives you a sense of what a fight the Ukrainians are putting up, and you actually can hear the voice of one man on that video. He's the person shooting it on his cell phone, and he says something that I think is very telling. He says, "They came to our land. I wish you all to burn in hell. I would give my life if needed." Those words, Brian, very much indicative of a sentiment that is felt by so many here in this country, as we have seen young and old lining up to try to get hold of a weapon, make a Molotov cocktail, and take part in any way they can in this stiff resistance that has been mounted against this Russian invasion, Brian.
A couple days ago, viewers saw you in Kharkiv in the subway stations turning into bunkers. It was incredible. You were able to broadcast live from underground to the whole world in that way. We're seeing a new form of war coverage every day as this rages. And yet now you're in Kyiv. Did you leave Kharkiv for safety reasons? And tell us about how you make those risk calculations.
So we did not leave Kharkiv for security reasons. We left because we felt it was important to come back to the capital, because it seemed like a major attack on the city center was imminent. There was heavy shelling and strikes going on in Kharkiv as we were leaving, and that obviously is an important calculation that you need to make when you're preparing to make any kind of major movement. You need to be sure that the roads are secure, that there is a viable way out. We're very lucky to work with security consultants like Mike Pratt, who help us to ensure that we make the right calculations. And I also think it's important to mention, Brian, that Ukrainian authorities are now saying that 2 Danish journalists were actually injured not too far from that area in the eastern part of the country. We don't know any details about that, but of course, always when you're doing this kind of work, the most important thing in order to be able to do the work is to ensure that you are taking every measure and precaution possible to protect your team, Brian.
And that Danish news outlet says those reporters were able to evacuate the area, were able to seek help, thank goodness. But it does underscore the risks. Now, what about there in Kyiv now? How are you able to know what's happening 5 or 10 miles away, or are you very limited? Because I get this sense on social media, very different than from television, you know, about how the fog of war. And I wonder if that fog of war is a reality for you as well.
The fog of war is a reality, particularly when there's a curfew in place and you're not allowed to go out onto the street. And so we have been relying heavily on an extraordinary team at CNN, Tim Lister, Katie Polglaze, Gianluca Mezzafiore, Paul Murphy, who have been combing exhaustively through all the social media footage that is out there, have been working to geolocate it, have been working to then place it in its appropriate context so that we can better understand the significance of it.